Hello everyone, Thomas from Medieval Review here, and I'm going to answer a very interesting question. One that on the surface level seems really simple, and you'd think I'd just be able to answer right off the top of my head, but quite honestly, it was actually a very difficult question I had to consider for about a month. The question was, if I had a limit of only $1,000 to spend, what sword or swords would I buy? So I know what my budget is, although I'm not limited on the quantity of swords. This is actually a really difficult question because I really like variety in my types of swords, and I like to be able to represent different uses. It would be really easy just to say, take that $1,000 and go buy, this one specific Albion sword, or this one specific Arms and Armor, or Valiant Armory, where you're going to get like the nice scabbard combo, or spend it on a Lockwood without a scabbard. There's a lot of different answers I could have for this, but I think if I had to be really honest, if I ignored the rest of my collection, I said I'm only starting out, I've got $1,000 to spend on 3 swords, what would it be? For me, it would be the 3 following swords. The first one would be a late 13th century greatsword from Albion Swords. Now this is actually a sword that I've had my eye on for quite a while. It's this nice kind of balance between being a great sword but still being mostly functional in terms of kind of using like a long sword. It would make a great cutting weapon for two-handed use. The blade profile and the way it's designed is really good in my opinion. It's a good type of sword for doing cuts, and you could really learn off of it. On top of that, you're getting a fantastic sword because it's coming from Albion. It's going to have that great fit and finish. You are going to be without a scabbard, but that's actually in some ways okay because this is a great sword. It's not something you normally just wear on your hip. This is one that you could easily have hanging on a wall, or just easily stored away in a nice box or something and pull it out when you need to really use it. It's an Albion, which means you're right out of the gate, you're going to have a really good sword from a really well-known, reputable company. In my opinion, in terms of their kind of entry-level swords, it's probably one of the better options. Now, I say all that without actually having owned one, but I'm sure that it'd be very nice to have. And I've had my eye on it. I might end up with it eventually anyway. The next sword I would get is the Hanwei Tinker Pierce Sharpened Single Hand Sword. That's item number SH2404. The reason I would get this sword is because it's actually a fairly decent price for what should be a fairly reliable single-handed weapon. Now, realistically, it doesn't have to be a Hanwei. It could really be any arming sword that would come in around that $200 price mark, which means that you could also get like a windlass sword, whether it be a Viking or an arming sword. The real key here is that I would want to have a single-handed weapon. I would want something that I could learn to not just use with 2 hands, but then also learn how to use a single-handed weapon. So that's what I would go for in terms of the European side. Now, those 2 things combined, and I'm not really including shipping and taxes here, those 2 things combined, you're coming out about $800, which means you've got enough room for maybe one more sword at that $200 price mark. So what would it be? Actually, this might surprise you a bit. I would actually go for a katana. I would find a nice entry level, certainly not the cheapest, but certainly not the most well put together katana. Now, I could just throw up pictures of katanas here, and I don't really shop for them all that often, so I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there are plenty of companies that make fairly decent entry-level katanas for that $200 price mark. And I think it is a fantastic weapon to kind of round out a collection. That way you're not going purely European medieval. You're not going purely European with large time frames. Certainly you could do some sort of saber, like modern military saber. You could go with a rapier or something like that. But I think that there is a distinct value in actually appreciating the martial cultures that are out there. And the katana is a very fine weapon, and it behaves very differently. So I think that's what I would go for to round out that $1,000 in terms of an initial collection starter kit. Those would probably be my 3 swords, and I think it'd actually be a great start. Certainly if someone gave me another $1,000 on top of that, I would then begin to round out a collection with maybe a rapier and a saber as well, so I can begin to sneak into other little areas of sword usage. And that's, for me, that's actually the big driver of, I've always talked about one of the reasons my collection is so big and encompasses not just high-end weapons but also lower end and low kind of entry level weapons, is because I want to have that variety. I want to understand what makes a sword tick, and I want to know how to use them. And certainly the easiest way to do that is to get a lot of them, have a chance to handle and hold and use a lot of them, and just get used to what that means. But there you go. 3 swords for under $1,000. Might have to pay a little bit more when you're talking about shipping and taxes, but certainly I think it would be a fine start to a collection, and it includes an Albion, which you really can't beat that. So hope that helps the people who might be wondering what to do to start a nice collection. That's my thoughts on it. Certainly this is actually completely based on swords I have not reviewed. Maybe in the future I'll talk about what swords I would buy if I was doing it with the knowledge of the swords that I currently own. But that might be another video. Cheers, guys.